everyone, welcome. I'd like to call the meeting August 27th, 2024, the Marine Resources Commission to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Associate Member Branson, followed by invocation by Associate Member Preston.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let's pray. Father God, we come before you this morning. God, we're just eternally grateful to be able to come together. God, you also tell us in Scripture that where two come together, you will be present. So God, we ask for your presence here amongst us, and God, as we go through the management of your resources and the gift that you have given us through creation. God, I just pray that it is your will that is shown and none of ours. God, we love you and we thank you. It's in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Once again, welcome everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm trying to get our first order of business. We need to get a approval of the agenda. Is there any corrections, deletions, or changes from the commission members or staff to the current agenda? None from staff, any from the commission members? All right, that being said, matters before the commission.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion to approve from Mr. Headley, a second from Mr. Branson. Is there any further discussion of the agenda? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, the minutes. Are there any corrections, deletions, or changes from the commission members or staff for the July 23, 2024 commission meeting minutes? Nothing from staff. Any from commission? Motion to approve. Got a motion to approve, Mr. Erskine, a second from Mr. Branson. I think there were two members that weren't here for that are here currently, so I guess you'll abstain. What members were not present for the last meeting? Mr. White, and that's it? Everybody else is here, so Mr. White abstained. Is there anyone else has any objections to that? That carries one abstention. All right. Now we're swearing the VMRC staff and VIM staff that will be speaking and present testimony during the meeting. Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. All right, before we get going, Randy, I know you're ready, but I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege as the chair. I'd like to call up Ron Ornans for a second. We have a celebrity in the audience today, so being recognized. So Senator DeSteff couldn't be here today, but he has entered a proclamation in the Senate during the last session and asked us to execute it for him. And I know he's very disappointed. Him and John Cosgrove had some business to take care of, and so they're in the process of doing that now. So we're going to go ahead and execute this. Go ahead and proceed. Mr. Pruitt, can you please come forward? Bill Pruitt, Commissioner Bill Pruitt. He always says he's going to get me back, so every time he tries to, so I make sure I get ahead plenty before he gets me back.
Good morning, everyone. This is a Senate Joint Resolution number 210 commending William A. Pruitt. Agreed to by the Senate March 6, 2024. Agreed to by the House of Delegates March 7, 2024. Whereas William A. Pruitt, former Commissioner of the Virginia Marine Resources Commission, has served the Commonwealth with unwavering commitment and dedication. And whereas William Bill Pruitt grew up on Tangier Island in the Chesapeake Bay, where in his youth he spent summers catching menhaden for crab pot bait with his grandfather. And whereas Bill Pruitt devoted 5 years of his life in service to the United States Army, demonstrating his patriotism and dedication to the defense of the nation. And whereas William A. Pruitt served with valor and distinction in combat during the Vietnam War, he demonstrated exceptional bravery and dedication during the Tet Offense in 1968 and earned a Bronze Star for his meritorious actions. And whereas from 1976 to 1983, Bill Pruitt served as the County Administrator of Richmond County, contributing to the local community growth and development. Whereas Bill Pruitt further demonstrated his commitment to public service after his appointment by Governor Charles Robb as Commissioner of the Virginia Marine Resources Commission. which maintains the Commonwealth's aquatic resources in the coastal area and inland waterways by establishing commercial fishing regulations and zoning for state-owned waters. And whereas Bill Pruitt ably led the Virginia Marine Resources Commission from February 1983 to July 6, 2006, serving under 7 governors from both parties and building a strong network of friends and colleagues in local, regional, and state agencies. Whereas Bill Pruitt enabled the Virginia Marine Resources Commission to function efficiently and effectively and receive many accolades for his professionalism, wise leaderships, sense of responsibility, and devotion to public service. Whereas July 2023, Bill Pruitt attended a special ceremony on Tangier Island where he was honored by the Virginia Marine Police and the Virginia Marine Resources Commission with the unveiling of a new state police boat, the W.A. Pruitt, which will patrol the areas around the island. Now therefore it be resolved by the Senate, the House of Delegates concurring, that the General Assembly hereby commend William A. Pruitt, former Commissioner of the Virginia Marine Resources Commission, for his exemplary service to the Commonwealth and the United States, and be it resolved further that the Clerk of the Senate prepare a copy of this resolution for presentation to William A. Pruitt as an expression of the General Assembly's admiration for his steady leadership and outstanding contributions to safety and security of the Commonwealth waterways. Susan Clark Schneier, Clerk of the Senate. Thanks, sir.
I've been waiting 2 years to do this, guys. I've been waiting 2 years to do this, and a whole lifetime. What's your pleasure?
Well, I must say, they got one thing right. I am a Tangerman. I'm humbled and honored, and I thank you. And whoever put all this stuff together, they certainly didn't get it from me. But if I was a success at all, it was because of the employees, my co-workers, both the division heads, and the people in the field, law enforcement and Habitat folks, and the people here in the office. That's the only way I survived 7 governors, was by people, and the help from them and the help from others. I thank you very much. Appreciate it. I don't deserve it, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. All right, thank you, Ron. Appreciate you. All right, Randy, you're up.
Mr. Member of the Commission, good morning. With your approval, I'd like to explain our Habitat agenda items to welcome Mr. White. So in the last couple of years, the Habitat Management Division has kind of evolved in the way we bring presentations to the Commission. We have what's called a page 1 agenda, a page 2 agenda, and a page 3 agenda. Today, we do not have a full brief item. We had one that was removed at the last minute because there was an item, it was a protested Sabacos case up in Northumberland, and the property owner has not as yet negotiated an agreement with the leaseholder where there was some encroachment, so that item was pulled. But what you're going to see are 8 page 2 items, which is where we've evolved to move more and more projects. It's a briefer format. They used to be, historically, when Bill Pruitt was commissioner, just Sabacos cases only. We're having a growing trend of wetland boards rescinding the ordinance, and we're becoming more and more the default wetland board. So now, on page 2 agenda, we have both Sabacos cases as well as wetland cases and beaches and dune cases. So in the cases that are on here today, you'll be serving as the default wetland boards for those localities. And then on page 3 is our consent item, and that's when we've observed an unauthorized work activity in the Commonwealth, and we worked through a consent agreement with the contractor property owner to avoid further enforcement action. In that case, we do have one page 3 item I'll get to later in a minute. Sir, if I could move into the page 2 items, I do have one twist. This is new. Up until yesterday morning, everything from item A through H was unprotested. Last night during Jeopardy, I was reading my email. We have 2 last-minute protests for item 2B as in boy, Michael Roseman. This involves both a subaqueous encroachment and wetlands. You're serving as the default wetlands for Essex County. So with your pleasure, I'd like to keep it on this page too. We do have a PowerPoint slide if necessary. I don't expect the protestants to be here. They might be here. I read through their comments, and their concerns are largely outside your jurisdiction. They noted that in their comments. But this project has been advertised twice in the newspaper, once on Town Hall, on our website. The public notice has been fully vetted. We've had VEMS on the property with their support. Essentially, it would be, in my opinion, sir, an unjust service to the property owner and the agent to pull them from the agenda. So I'd like to keep it on with the understanding that if the protestants show and you want to go to a full briefing, I'll have a PowerPoint presentation ready.
Kelsey, are you good with that?
And I will add one last thing, because of the increasing wetland cases on the page 2 agenda, that's why you're seeing lesser page 1 briefings. We used to historically present them in full, but we believe that it's appropriate with our on-site review with VEMS on the property, fully vetted public interest review. We feel like the page 2 agenda is an appropriate venue for bringing this case before you. We'll start with item 2A, Dockside Condominium Owners Association. This project requires a VMRC subaqueous permit only. This is a rebuild of an existing facility. They're going to replace 3 condominium piers for a total of 82 new wet slips. You can see the metrics for piers A, B, and C. I won't read this to you before you. There's a number of finger piers and main docks and main stem piers. This is all along Sarah's Creek at the terminus of Sunset Drive in Gloucester County. We recommend approval of the project with a royalty of $51,192 for the new encroachment over 34,128 square feet of state-owned submerged land at a rate of $1.50 per square foot. I will add for Mr. White's knowledge that the commission adopted the rent and royalty schedule in December of 2005, so that's the schedule we're operating from, and those royalties are allowed by statute. Item 2B is the case where we had the last-minute protest. This is Michael Roseman. The agent is here. They're requesting authorization to remove 2 existing failed timber groins, 2 failed bulkheads, construct 2 new 75-foot-long low-profile groins, an 84-foot-long ready reef sill structure, a row of EnviroLock bags, landward of the sill, and they're going to place clean sand backfill and plant it with tidal wetlands vegetation, along with an 84-foot Flexomat structure along the Rappahannock River at 149 Pops Lane in Essex County. The project requires both a VMRC subaqueous and a wetlands permit. Essex County rescinded the wetlands ordinance, so you are the default authority for Essex County. Item 2C, Buckeye Terminals is requesting authorization to construct 4 riprap sills with sand backfill and plantings, creating a total of 997 linear feet of living shoreline at their property, which is commercial 4030 Well Street, along the southern branch of Elizabeth River in Chesapeake. Chesapeake rescinded the tidal wetlands ordinance. You are serving as the Chesapeake default wetlands board. The project requires both a subaqueous and a wetlands permit. Item 2D, Teofilio Ramirez is requesting authorization to construct 2 stone breakwaters, 290 linear feet, reconstruct an existing 150-foot-long breakwater, and add sand nourishment adjacent to their property along 1101 Baytree Beach in York County. The beach requires a VMRC subaqueous permit. Excuse me, the project requires a VMRC subaqueous permit. And item 2E, McAllister Towing was requesting authorization for 175 linear feet of, to replace 175 linear feet of deteriorating bulkhead, add an additional 32 linear feet of riprap to an existing revetment, an 80-foot-long concrete wharf with a 155 by 20-foot T-head, 90 feet of new timber fenders along an existing concrete platform, 4 new timber dolphins, a series of pin barges for mooring, construct a new 57-foot timber approach pier with a new 48-foot timber pin barge, and install 3 stone sills with sand backfill and native plantings for the creation of a living shoreline adjacent to a commercial facility at 902 Southampton Avenue along the Elizabeth River in Norfolk. This is the old Miles Seafood place from the 70s. All derelict structures within the vicinity of the project below mean level water will be removed. Pursuant to section 22-1206B of the Code of Virginia, this proposal is exempt from rent and royalties. The project requires a VMRC subaqueous permit. Item 2F, the National Park Service is requesting to increase the height and base of 6 existing rock sills that were previously authorized at the southern end of Dyke Marsh Wildlife Preserve and Potomac River, adjacent to the George Washington Memorial Highway in Fairfax County. They were previously approved. The settlements there are soft. These things are sinking, and to achieve the project design height, they're going back in and top dressing them with additional stone. Item 2G, Purdue Agribusiness Grain is requesting authorization to construct a new 132-foot long steel sheet pile bulkhead with backfill and a concrete cap along Hoskins Creek at 1000 Granary Road in Essex County. The applicant has agreed to purchase wetland credits from the Virginia Aquatic Trust Fund to offset the tidal wetland impacts of 240 square feet. This requires a VMRC wetlands permit. Again, Essex County has rescinded their wetlands ordinance. Lastly, item 2H, Huntington Ingalls, New Shipbuildings requesting authorization to construct 5 berthing fenders along Pier 6 and to modify the existing fender system and components to support production operations at their facility in the James River and City Newport News. This project requires a VMRC subaqueous permit. I'll try to answer any questions you have.
Is there any questions from the commission for Mr. Thorson?
Randy, thank you. I had a question back to item 2B.
Sure.
So the public comment that you received, the opposition, was that received outside of the public comment window, or you said it was sometime last night, so?
No, with the amended language that we took to General Assembly 23, the public news requirements for a wetlands case now is you're required to advertise the case in the newspaper 7 days prior to the hearing. So we consider the public comment period up to the day we bang the bang the gavel open, and so I think they're within their purview. It has happened over the years that we get the last minute protests, and we may say 15 days in our subaqueous. We have a different regulation for subaqueous for newspaper notices that the statute requires the newspaper ad for the wetlands case, and I would argue that they're well within their right to come in at the last minute.
As a follow-up, so can you detail maybe what their protest was?
Yes, I was reading them, and I actually entered them in manually. They did not follow the lead of using the link. I entered the stuff manually last night. I was watching Jeopardy. It's mostly, and they admit in their comments, things that they believe are largely out of your jurisdiction, raw sewage running across the street, failed septic system. And the agent is here, in addition to there's some grant funding to protect the shoreline. I think there'll be some additional grant funding to put in an above ground septic system and get the property back into shape. But it was largely a desire that the house not be allowed to remain on the property. It's 13.9 feet from the top of the bank. It's almost in the river, and I think the neighbors are not happy with the way the property's been maintained, and that is well outside of your jurisdiction.
Any more
Thank you.
questions?
Yes, sir.
Any more questions from Chief Bowen? Thank you, Randy. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on any of these matters that are on the page 2? Anyone wish to speak for or against? That being said, matters before the commission. I move to approve. Motion to approve for Mr. Branson, page 2 items. Do I get a second? Get a second? Second. Any discussion, any further discussion by the commission? That being said, is there anyone in opposition? Anyone in opposition? All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Randy, you're up again.
And I have not been in front of the commission in more recent months for page 3 cases. It doesn't mean we aren't having some problems with some contractors that are out there working on the permits, but I will take exception to this case. This is Joshua Walters requesting out the fact of authorization to retain a 624 square foot elevated observation deck platform serving 3017 Mansfield Lane along Blackwater Creek in the city of Virginia Beach. In this particular case, this is one of our more responsible marine contractors. He's never been before us with any issues. He's responsible enough that in addition to never been before you before, he generally will not build any of the projects until the project is staked out so that he puts it in the correct footprint. You might recognize that Blackwater Creek is a little southern, and the agent who does the stakeout is here as well. This project was far enough off his beaten path that they had a boat going down in this part of the world for another job. So they went and stuck up this job as well. The contractor came by, saw the stakes, went, it must be permitted, and he built it. And it's slightly smaller and without the floating dock, so there's no issue with the footprint. Tiffany was on her way down to do the site visit. They self-reported. That's important, at least to me. The agent called and said, oops, he saw our stakes. We had our guys down there because it was so far south. We went in and stuck it up. It was a communication. I spoke to the contractor. I've never met him before. I know Justin and Tiffany have. He's well aware of, what has happened here. And I just said, basically, please don't ever go to a stakeout again without a piece of paper in your hand. It's got my name on it or the commissioner's name on it. So they're here to speak to the issue. They have agreed, the homeowners agreed to a $900, civil charge and triple permit fee, and the contractor has agreed to the civil charge $1,000. I don't have the code memorized, but it's the code section that allows us to accept the civil charge in lieu of further enforcement action, and we are recommending that you accept those charges, sir. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for Chief Owen? Thank you. Is the applicant or a representative of the applicant present and wish to speak? Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
State your name for the record, please.
For the record, Robert Simon, Waterfront Consulting. We're the agent on this application. We've done many applications down in the Blackwater, Mansfield Lane area. And Randy really summed it up well. This location, we have to tow a boat down there and launch at a very rickety ramp to do it. We had another project right there on Mansfield Lane, so we staked both of them out. And it's miscommunication. Edric did check in with me at one time. I said, hey, we got 2 of them already. The permit's issued. City's good, Corps good. He saw the stakeout and he went to work. He did not call me back. So I apologize for the miscommunication, but the project was built in accordance with the plans, and I'll accept the permit from VMRC. I've talked to my applicant, Mr. Walters. He's agreed to the triple permit fees. Edric's here. He agrees to the civil penalty as well.
Is there any questions for the speaker from the commission? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this matter in the audience, for or against? All right. That being said, matters before the commission. Sir.
Sure, I appreciate their coming forward and being honest, and their honest integrity in this process is appreciated, and I recommend I motion that we approve page 3A item.
Got a motion to approve from Mr. Ransom, a second from Mr. Hand. Any further discussion needed?
So they're gonna leave it at the 624 square feet, they're not gonna enlarge it?
That's correct. Randy, that's correct.
It's not. It's framed and built. Yes, sir.
Any further discussion? Is there anyone that opposed to this motion? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Kelsey, I'm gonna err on the side of caution and assume that we don't need to close the council session today. All right, thank you so much. All right, Mr. Kenyon, Chief Kenyon, you're up with the license status review.
agenda item number 5, license status review. Today you are hearing 3 cases. These are companion cases, all stemming from the same incident. You will see 3 individuals in front of you, Mr. Anthony Hogg, who served as the boat captain on this incident, as well as Mr. Raymond Jenkins and Mr. Dean Ray, who served as boat hands or mates aboard this vessel. These are all being brought to you under Code Section 282-528. This code section mandates that the Commission revoke all licenses and fishing privileges of any individual convicted of shellfish theft under 28.2-527. This agenda item is presented to the Commission to decide the specific length of time for which these licenses and these fishing privileges shall be revoked. Just to give you a full look of what 28.2-528 looks like, it requires that the Commission, without notice or hearing, revoke all licenses and privileges, and that bottom part there, no new licenses shall be issued for a minimum of 6 months or a maximum of 5 years after such conviction, in the discretion of this Commission. So the first individual we have in front of you is Anthony Hogg. He did serve as the boat captain on this case. You can see his new convictions up on the screen. They all have to do, all brought under 527, 523, 20.2, 201, and 260, all having to do with the theft of oysters. Here are his most recent 2023 and 2024 licenses and permits. You can see this includes commercial registration, oyster user fee, as well as hand scrape and aquaculture licenses. Mr. Hogg also had previous violations previous to this, before this revocation. They can be found in your packet, but as well as on the screen there. As you can see, many of these are not related to oysters, but they are part of the overall case. Some background on Mr. Hogg. Mr. Hogg first appeared in front of this commission for failure to report during the September 2013 commission meeting. At that time, the commissioner placed Mr. Hogg on probation for 2 years. He then appeared in front of the commission for a second time in April of 2014 for violating this probation and for a subsequent failure to report. At that time, the commission chose to suspend Mr. Hogg's licenses and his permit for 6 months, followed by a 1-year probation. Mr. Hogg then appeared in front of this commission for a third time in May of 2015 for violating this probation with natural resource violations for harvesting oysters with a hand scrape in a hand tong area. The commission then imposed a suspended 2-year revocation and put Mr. Hogg on a 2-year probation. So essentially, if he violated his probation, he would automatically go on to revocation. Mr. Hogg's licenses and permits were revoked June 1st, 2016, owing to 2 striped bass violations. Mr. Hogg appeared in front of this commission for a 4th time on November 1st, 2016 for 6 more natural resource violations, including 3 violations on May of 2016. At that time, the commission chose to revoke all of Mr. Hogg's licenses and privileges for a period of 5 years, which ended October 31st, 2021. So now Mr. Hogg's appearing in front of this commission with these new convictions that you saw previously, owing to the theft of oysters. With the theft of oysters, all that is served under 28.2, 528 for the revocation of licenses for the theft of oysters. And this commission, without notice or hearing, shall revoke all the licenses and fishing privileges within the Commonwealth's tidal waters to take, catch fish, shellfish, or marine organisms issued to any person convicted on unlawfully taking oysters from the public grounds or any riparian planting grounds. Mr. Hogg was convicted in June of this year, so no new licenses shall be issued to such a person for a minimum of 6 months or a maximum of 5 years after such conviction in the discretion of this commission. Law enforcement is available here if you have any specific questions maybe about the case, but these are the matters before the commission as far as Anthony Hogg.
any questions from the commission to Chief Kenyon? I think you summed it up pretty good. Thank you. I will call up, not that we are required to, but is Mr. Hogg here and want to speak and address the commission? Come forward. Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
State your name and the microphone for the record.
Anthony Dale Hogg.
Proceed.
I'm guilty as I can be. They bought that new piece of ground over there. I swung her wide. That's it. Guilty as I can be. I'm sorry. Won't happen again. I've been paying attention to all the grounds and stuff. And like I said, it was a small area. I'm guilty as I can be. It won't happen no more.
Is there any questions from the commission? Mr. Branson?
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Hogg, you've got quite a record here coming before the commission. You tell us you won't do it again, it won't happen again, but your past says a lot about your future.
Right.
Now, you also dragged two other watermen into this too. You're the captain of your vessel. You're responsible for your vessel, for your harvest, for your fishing activities. And you brought two other people here that now are gonna be right there here in a few minutes, right before you. I don't know what to say, you know, I see a lot of violations here, a lot of the same violations, and that is just not acceptable.
Is there anywhere else with it? Commission? I will say, I'll end on this. I've been doing this a while, been involved. I haven't seen anyone as egregious as this. So, in my tenure, you were suspended for 5 years, got your license back in 2021, and you're back here in 2024 for a whole stack of violations. I mean, hell, you're before this commission more than I am. You know, that, I don't know. Are there any more questions? Thank you, Mr. Hogg. Matters before the commission. Kelsey, I am correct here that we don't have a choice. The commission doesn't have a choice on suspension. They have to decide how long it is. It's between 6 months and 5 years is the max. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
So this is licenses and privileges. This is everything, and we don't. The code section doesn't give us the ability to be flexible other than the length of the suspensions. Mr. Branson.
Go ahead.
Mr. Erskine.
My question is maybe for Kelsey or the commissioner, but is it no new licenses shall be issued for the period that we decide upon for each violation, or is this cumulative for all violations, or could we do 5 years for multiple violations?
It is, and Kelsey, you could help out on this, but it is cumulative, so it is 5 years from the date of conviction. It's not
Max.
for each one, so it's licenses and privileges for a maximum of 5 years from the date of conviction, even though they are in a batch.
Okay. Thank you.
That was gonna be my observation from some of our new fellow members, is that this is from the date of conviction, which was
June 18th.
June 18th. And the regulation states that we shall, for these oyster violations, it's one of the few regulations in code, Virginia code, that says they must appear before the commission, and it will be from 6 months to a maximum of 5 years. And although I wish we had another alternative, that's up to the General Assembly, and I hope that they will at some point consider for habitual violators of giving us more authority. But with that said, I'll move that we impose a 5-year revocation of all fishing privileges and licensing for this case.
I'll second that.
Got a second from Mr. I got you all messing me up, Mr. Preston.
And for clarification, that's from the date of conviction.
It is from date of conviction.
So 5 years from date of, which is the max penalty
Yes.
we can do, this board can do. So we have a motion from Mr. Branson for 5 years max privilege. I'm just gonna use the term privileges, Kelsey, because that covers everything. That's licenses, I mean, it's all of the above. And I have a second from Mr. Preston. Is there any need for further discussion? Mr. Holmes?
Yes. Yeah, is this what he does for a living?
I'm not sure
Yes.
if this is his full-time job.
I would err on the side and say yes. I mean, I don't know how you get that many violations and not be doing it all the time. Any further questions? That being said, matters before the commission for vote, is there anyone that opposes the revocation of 5 years? Is there any opposition to it? Anyone want to abstain? That being said, motion carries unanimously. 5 years. Thank you. On to the next.
The next case in front of you is Mr. Raymond Jenkins Jr. Again, this is a companion case. He served as a mate or a helper aboard Mr. Hogg's vessel. You can see the 2 new convictions there under 28-2-527, so the same exact section of code in which we just discussed. Mr. Raymond Jenkins Jr. has no licenses and permits, so although there are no licenses to revoke, fishing privileges are something that the code says shall be revoked for a period of time. So no other convictions in the past 5 years, no other 24 or 23 licenses and permits. 28.2528, revocation of licenses for theft of oysters requires the commission without notice or hearing, required by 28.2.232 to revoke all licenses and fishing privileges within the Commonwealth's tidal waters to take, catch, fish, shellfish, or marine organisms issued to any person convicted unlawfully of taking oysters or other mollusca from the public grounds, any riparian oyster planting grounds assigned pursuant to Article 1 of Chapter 6 of this title, or any general oyster planting grounds pursuant to Article 2 of Chapter 6 of this title. No licenses shall be issued to such person for a minimum of 6 months or a maximum of 5 years after such conviction is the discretion of the commission. I'm not sure if Mr. Jenkins is here in the audience. He did indicate that he didn't want to violate any probation by coming to this meeting. However, these cases can be heard in his absence if the commission chooses.
Is there any questions for Chief King? Thank you. Is Mr. Jenkins in the audience who wishes to speak? Please come forward. Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
State your name in the microphone for the record.
Raymond Jenkins Jr.
Proceed.
I have no questions. Just like I said, we was guilty. He swung out, and that's what it is.
Is there any questions from the commissioner?
So explain to me what happened. Are you a regular crew member
Yeah.
for Mr. Hogg?
Yeah.
You've been working with him for how long?
Oh, a little bit, about a month or
That
two.
is 6 months, a
No.
year? Not even 6 months?
Close to it.
So what happened that day?
We was in the line, and he just swung out, and that's what it is. I mean, he just went over the line just a little bit. Cause you got the tide and stuff carrying you down the river, so.
Are you a full-time waterman? That's what
I
you do?
used to be, but I lost my license, and
Okay. All right.
I just help out now, you know what I mean?
Any more questions?
Were you aware they were over the line? You were over the line?
No, sir. If you got so much tide, it's just carried us out a little teeny bit, and I guess, you know, he seen us, so.
Any more questions? Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Commissioner, is the officer present?
I
I
think
don't know if it's appropriate at this time,
Yeah, you can-
but I'd just like to hear both perspectives
Yeah,
too,
yeah, let's-
if that's possible.
Colonel Rogers? You're sworn in. Just state your name for the record, sir.
Colonel Matt Rogers, Chief of Law Enforcement.
Good morning. I just, I understand how it works, but I heard their perspective. Also got to read the track record for the first gentleman that we discussed already. And I got to hear a little bit of what the track record was just now from the second. But that particular day of the violation, if you can just describe, I feel like it's a little bit more than just kind of going over the line.
Yes, sir, I can, just a little bit, and just to kind of provide some perspective on when they say they swung wide, there was a GPS tracker on this particular vessel while they were out on the water. And this wasn't, obviously they were charged on the one date, but they were out there on several dates, and this was also an admission made by Mr. Hogg. But in all 3 times that they were observed in the area, they were approximately a little over 100 meters into the area. So
100 meters?
Yes, sir.
So there was some grace that was given the first couple times?
Yes, sir. So yes, they were given grace. So what wasn't identified on the first 2 days, they had an actual visual observation confirming the GPS tracker on the 3rd time, and subsequently charged them on the June 26th date.
Yes, sir. And were they approached the first couple of
They
days?
were not approached. They were just observed by the GPS tracker alone.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And Colonel, I have a question. This was an investigation, right? And the officers had received complaints.
Yes, sir. This was
Credible complaints and
credible
caused them
complaints
to
in the
particularly
area.
target this area.
Yes, sir. And this was in the 1E area, which was closed at the time.
Mr. Branson.
So, Chief, so this area was closed
Yes,
that they moved into, and this GPS tracker was placed by your special investigations?
Yes, sir.
Because of other complaints from watermen and
Yes, sir. By watermen, they provided a specific boat with a vessel number.
that they knew was violating the
They knew
law?
it was violating, so they, by a magistrate's warrant or order, they were able to get the GPS tracker on to the vessel.
Thank you. Appreciate your staff and your.
Yes, sir.
So this wasn't a one-time,
No,
one-wide.
this is more than just the 3 times that it was observed. It was observed by other fellow watermen as well, and, yeah.
And again, Mr. Hogg did make an admission to the investigators that he'd been doing it for some time, on multiple occasions.
Thank you.
Mr.
I just want clarification when you said going over the line, that was in a closed area, public closed area?
Yes, sir. I believe his got grounds next to the public area, which is why they were indicating that they were swinging wide and going over the line, but I would contend that 100 meters is a little bit more than just swinging over the line.
Thank you.
Consistently. Any more questions for the Colonel? Thank you, Colonel.
Yes, sir.
Matters before the commission. Now, remember, Kelsey, this is the same code section, so we don't have an option of whether or not we revoke. It's the period of time, 6 months to 5 years, correct? So it's revoked, it's just how long is the question, is before the commission to decide.
And he has no license to suspend, but we're suspending the
Rights and privileges
in the future. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? He said that he had already had a license suspended earlier. When was that and what was that for?
He said he lost them, he said he was suspended. Mr. Jenkins.
Lost?
Come forward, please. The question from Ms. Edwards is, when you lost your license, were they suspended, or did you lose them because you didn't buy them?
I can buy them, yeah.
You didn't buy them? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Matters before the commission.
So their choices of probation or suspension?
Now, it's suspension, a minimum of 6 months. Now, Kelsey, they can go longer than 6 months with probation, correct? But the suspension's got to at least be 6 months. Is that correct?
Yes.
So you can put probation in there as well, but you can't, it's got to be a minimum of 6 months by the code, maximum of 5 years suspension.
Mr. Commissioner, I'd like to make a motion that his license, the future, would be 1 year from the date of the conviction. Based on the fact, and I base that on the fact that he was a crew member, and based on the answer that you just provided regarding your previous license, that they were not suspended, they were lost, you did not renew. I think I'd have a different approach and a different view on that if they were suspended previously.
And 1 year suspension?
Lucy and I were discussing this, there's a motion, hasn't been seconded, I'd like to add that I think, knowing that this is from date of conviction of June.
March 15th on this.
Oh, March.
March 15th on this.
So we've almost got 6 months of that
Good
1
point.
year have already passed. I would move for it and put out to the the body here that, to at least discuss something more of 2 years or 3 years with suspension up to the 5-year mark. So he has a revocation of any fishing privileges and as well as combined probation to fill out the 5 years.
So is that a friendly amendment?
If you,
It is.
well,
Yes.
then I would offer that you go 3 years and 2 years probation.
3 years suspension, 2 years probation.
Second.
Oh, well, I gotta make sure it's a friendly amendment first.
It is, yes, sir.
All right, so he accepts a friendly amendment to 3 years revocation, 2 years probation.
Probation.
And it is seconded by Mr. Erskine. Any further discussion?
Yeah, has he come before this commission before of any penalties? So he is just a crew member of Mr. Hogg, is that correct?
That's correct.
I mean, I personally think since this is his first offense, that's pretty harsh. I would like to see what his first presentation.
No, I openly agreed based on the conviction date, where in my head originally when I was discussing that, I was referring to the June, but this goes back to March. So we're well into what that suspension would be. That's,
Well, here's the thing, I have a motion and second it for
Yes.
3 years revocation and 2 years probation after that for the entirety of the 5 years. If you want to make another amendment, another motion, we can. But we either got to hear this motion or I gotta have another one, so, because it's been seconded.
I think we have,
Ms.
Mr. Commissioner, I think we have to deal with this motion that's on the table first.
We can go back to it, it stays on the table if the next one fails. So, Ms. Edwards?
Can I just ask a question? Does this mean he cannot obtain a license, or does it mean he can also not work on a boat as a skip, as a mate with
He
this
can't work.
at the water at all?
We don't have a choice on that. The 6 months at minimum, he can't even go recreational fishing.
Okay.
He can't do anything. Mr. Hammond?
I want input on the discussion. I think it's on the captain, and being a mate or crew, I'm of the feeling to go much easier, especially with no previous record. So I'm in the camp of, I like the original 1-year motion, and if it ends up, it's only gonna be another 6 or 7 months, so be it. But I think there should be an extended period of probation, because that's a whole nother story. I like the 1 year and a 5-year probation.
I would, Commissioner, I see that I put a lot of responsibility on the captain, but if he's been doing this for a while, as evidenced by what Chief of Law Enforcement brought up, and the regulations are written in our code of Virginia harsh like this, because this represents a tremendous value to the state of Virginia. This is, oyster shellfish is huge in Virginia, and these regulations reflect that. So what I would like to offer up is a substitute motion for a 2-year revocation and 3-year probation period. That's revocation of all fishing privileges in the Commonwealth for 2 years. That gives them approximately a year and a half, no fishing, and then probation for 3 years. And y'all, would be acceptable to you, sir?
Goes back to the
So
second.
if it's a substitute motion, then we've got to get a second, or further discussion. Will you second?
No, I have discussion though when you're ready.
Okay, is there a second to that substitute motion?
I'll go second.
We have a second. Y'all, this is gonna turn into ASMFC here. So, all right, Mr. Erskine, you got the floor.
So I appreciate the testimony and the officer's work in something like this, and I think there's testimony that this is maybe not a repeat violation and conviction, but certainly this isn't the first time. So if we don't send a strong message from this commission that somebody that knowingly is on the vessel that's committing these theft of oysters, then we're just going to continue to get the same repeat offenders. So I agree, and I think we sent the strong message for the captain of the vessel with Mr. Hogg. But a probation, something lighter, or just 6 months or a year, I think is ineffective for what this commission's trying to do.
300 meters too, guys, multiple times. He was on the boat. Just food for thought. So,
If I can just also follow up, Mr. Commissioner. So, these are watermen that work hard. And there's a few individuals maybe that are not doing the right thing, evidenced by these hearings. But this is a closed public area that they're only hurting their fellow watermen when they go in there and steal oysters from these areas. So, it is a valuable resource to the Commonwealth. It's a tremendous economic benefit. We've only seen increase in public harvest from these grounds. So, I think there needs to be a strong message sent.
I have one question for Adam, because we're talking in a wet matter of, like, they didn't have a license, they couldn't have a limit. Were they supposed to be working private ground at the time?
I believe yes.
Which means there's no limit. That means they didn't need a license and they could keep as many oysters as they wanted. So they didn't need a license. Only one person on it needed a permit. You didn't need to be a commercial fisherman to be able to do this activity. And so they went on the public ground and stole, make it look like, well, I don't have a license. You don't need a license. Public fisheries don't need a license for it. And correct me if I'm wrong, did they go, the closed area they went into was the public fishery area?
Yes,
Would have
that's
been
correct.
public ground that would have been opened up maybe later on in the oyster season?
That is correct.
Okay. Right. So right now, the last one we have with a second is 2 years suspension, 3 years probation from the date of conviction. Do I have any further discussion needed before I put this one for a vote? This is
If this vote fails on the substitute motion, then you go back to the original.
back to the original 3 years,
3
2 years probation, 3 year suspension. All right, I'm gonna do a, let's do a show of hands on this one, so, because, all those in favor of 2 years revocation from date of conviction, followed by 3 years probation, raise your hand. I have three, Mr. Preston, Ms. Edwards, and Mr. Headley. All those opposed, raise your hand. I have Mr. Hand, Ms. Kellum, Mr. Erskine, Mr. Branson, and Mr. White opposed. That one fails. Fails 5-3. All right, back to the original. Any further discussion? We're not going to caucus. We're not going to turn into ASMSC today. So we'll just go forward. Is there any further discussion before I put this one to a vote?
Will you repeat it?
Yeah, I will. I want to make sure you get your discussion in, because I don't get too confused. I have it written down. Ms. Hogg, you're keeping up, right? I know she's way ahead of us anyway. She's really, really good. All right, so here we have 3 years revocation from date of conviction, 2 years probation afterwards. We have a motion that was made and had it seconded. Is there any further discussion needed? 3 years revocation, 2 years probation. All right, I'm gonna do a show of hands again. All those in favor of this, raise your hand. I have Ms. Kellum, Mr. Erskine, Mr. Branson, Mr. Headley, Mr. Preston, and Ms. Edwards. Okay. All those opposed, raise your hand. Mr. White and Mr. Hand. And motion passes 6-2. So it is 3 years suspension, a revocation of all privileges, and 2 years probation. Y'all are making me earn it today, I know that. Nope, no comments. If you want to go to the door, you can talk to the officer.
The third and final case in front of you is also a companion case. This is from Mr. Dean Ray. He served as a mate or a helper aboard this vessel. You can see the new convictions are the same, both under 28-527 for the larceny of oysters. The date of conviction on this one is January 19th, 2024. Mr. Ray had no 2024 licenses or permits and no previous convictions within the last 5 years. This would be under the same 28.2-528 revocation of license and theft for oysters. I've already read this into the record. This commission shall, without notice, for a period of 6 months to a maximum of 5 years after the conviction date, at the discretion of this commission. And again, I'm not sure if Mr. Ray is in the audience, however, it can be heard in his absence if the commission chooses.
Yeah, I'll call his name just in case. Are you finished? Any questions for Mr. Kenyon here? Chief Kenyon? Thank you. Mr. Ray, are you in the audience and wish to speak on this matter? He did send letter confirmation saying that he received his notice, go ahead and hear it, but in his absence, he wasn't planning on attending today. So, and he obviously said he didn't have any licenses, so, commercial licenses. So we had an idea he wasn't coming. That being said, matters before the commission.
Could we hear the officer's report like we heard on the last one?
Yes, it's a companion case. Please come forward, Carl. All three were on the same vessel.
But each time, the whole, all of it?
Yeah, all three on the same vessel, yes, sir.
Yes. All three on the vessel at the same time.
So the same as Jenkins?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Branson?
That's why I move for the same as the last case, 3-year revocation from date of conviction, that was January, and 2-year probationary period following that.
Okay, I have a motion for 3 years revocation from conviction.
Second
And have a second for Mr. Preston. And 2 years probation afterwards for all privileges and licenses and so forth. Any further discussion? We'll do a show of hands again. All those in favor of 3-year revocation and 2-year probation, raise your hand. Ms. Kellum, Mr. Erskine, Mr. Branson, Mr. Headley, Ms. Edwards, Mr. Preston. All those opposed, raise your hand. Mr. Hand, Mr. White. Motion carries 6-2. All right. I guess we're on, that's the end of the license status review for today. Do you have, you're next for oysters.
Next item on the agenda is a public hearing to amend Chapter 720 pertaining to the restrictions of oyster harvest, and this would be to establish the 2024-2025 areas of public harvest, public oyster harvest seasons, and oyster resource conservation measures. The seasons for public oyster harvest are established by Code Section 282506. However, in order to protect or promote the growth of oysters, this commission can establish public oyster harvest seasons or oyster resource conservation measures. This is not a requirement. However, the commission has chose to adopt seasons, area harvest, and gears over the last 20 years, and this would be to efficiently utilize the resource and adapt to both the short terms and the long-term needs of this fishery. Just as a little background, this kind of gives you public oyster and private oyster harvest going back to the early 60s. You can see that in the early 60s, it was somewhere around 3 to 3.5 million total harvest, about 1 million pounds in the public, and then a period of the late 80s to 2000 that was extremely low due to disease in the area, and you can see there's been a steady incline over the last 20 years for this resource. If I zoom in a little bit more, you can see over the last 20 years that harvest has generally tracked upward. We had a record low in the early 90s and 2000s, and then we had a record high in 2022, 2023. Preliminary harvest numbers for just the public fishery season indicate it was a modest decrease from the previous year of about 300,000 bushels down to about 256,000 bushels. It's still well above that 20-year average of about 143,000 bushels. And this modest decrease is mostly due to market conditions. Seasonal harvest each year is directly affected by season lengths, the number of active watermen, as well as the open number of days. It's not a reflection about the condition of the resource that's on the bottom. That condition of the resource has generally been stable or increasing over the last 20 years. So any dip in harvest is not necessarily indicative that the condition of the resource is going down in a significant way. It's mostly tied to the market changing from year to year. And one of the questions that's asked when you break down private harvest a little bit, how much is coming from containerized? This is pretty consistent over the last year. It's kind of a 40%, 40%, 20% split, with 20% of what we call private, specifically containerized, either in bottom cages or floating cages. Staff met with the Shellfish Management Advisory Committee on 2 different occasions over the last month. This would be to discuss these areas of public oyster harvest seasons, gears, and oyster resource conservation measures. To recommend management measure each year, staff presents to this commission information that's gathered through both the annual stock assessment of the public oyster grounds, which is done in conjunction with the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, as well as advice and recommendations gathered from these meetings with the Shellfish Management Advisory Committee, and then as well as public comment and public input that you'll hear from today. There are many consensus items discussed at the Shellfish Management Advisory Committee that are very consistent with the recent management strategies over the last few years. They really didn't have much discussion at SMAC. The intent of these measures was really to allow for incremental long-term expansion of this oyster resource and also provide short-term fishery stability. Some of those consensus items were maintaining some 3-year rotational areas in the main stem of the Rappahannock River, which has been working for quite a while. Maintain harvest areas to be open in different areas, meaning spreading out the effort among different river systems rather than concentrating effort in any one standalone river system. Extending the season length in the James River upwards of 3 years ago in the rotation, we're only at 13 weeks. There is a recommendation for a 22-week season, so expansion of the James River, which has kind of been the workhorse of this oyster resource. Consistent bushel limits, and also maintaining harvest days that end at 12 years. There are some other consensus items through the Shellfish Management Advisory Committee that are changes from the most recent management structure. One of the recommendations from the advisory committee that staff was also recommending was creating an online system for the daily reporting of seed. Currently, that seed reporting operates on a call-in line, which is not extremely the most effective way to do this. So transitioning to an online reporting, this eliminates the need for them to call in every day and instead requires them to report online within 24 hours. They are already required to report monthly, so it streamlines and makes it a little bit efficient and hopefully allows for some real-time decision-making on when these fisheries should close based on the quota. So that was a recommendation from SMAC and supported by staff, as well as transitioning a portion of the upper Pocomoke to a hand-tong area and potentially developing some rotational management strategies up in that area. Currently, those areas are not open consistently. It's kind of a year-to-year to determine whether or not they should open. So this is an attempt to, one, do a little bit better job with replenishment, and also provide consistency to that area so they know year-to-year what might be open. And then allowing for both clean comb and oyster seed in the same day. The draft regulation you see in front of you is a draft regulation that is put out way in advance of any of the advisory committee recommendations. So if you go specifically to the chart in there that shows the seasons, that is something that we need to work far in advance, so doesn't necessarily representative of the SMAC recommendations. However, the language you see on the screen, I know it's a little bit hard to see, I should have maybe chose a little bit better colors, but this is the regulatory change that you can see in your packet under Section 85 that shows the elimination of Section D there, and that is the call-in portion of the daily seed. It retains in yellow there all the requirements of those daily call-ins. It just shifts the responsibility to an online platform within 24 hours. So all the requirements are still there. It's just kind of shifting the manner in which we do it. I just wanted to point your eyes to that actual regulatory change. It's been vetted through SMAC as well as our internal regulatory review committee. And the other section that you'll see is section 40, adding clean call there allows individuals now to do two things in one day, to both clean call and seed in the same day, as long as they are taking separate trips. I want to show you a map of that Pocomoke Sound area. This is one that up in this area, relatively shallow. It's generally been a difficult place to replenish because of the shallowness of it. It's hard to get barges. So working with the members in that area, transitioning this to a hand-tong fishery, and for this year, we can look at it again in the future, but that would allow it to feed into areas 10 and 11 and possibly develop some kind of rotational hand scrape fishery in that area. And that would provide consistency, so you know year to year what will be open, what will be the opportunities, as well as getting on a good replenishment. So that was something highlighted that both SMAC and staff worked together on to come to a consensus. So over those two different meetings, this is the recommendation adopted by that Shellfish Management Advisory Committee on their August 14th meeting. I know this is really busy, but this adopts season lengths, gears, and also areas of harvest. Some of the things I want to point out on here, we talked about the James River opening October 15th and continuing all the way through the end of March. Having concurrent areas open in different river systems, meaning that in any given month it spreads effort out between the James River, the York River, the Rappahannock River, the Great Wicomico, rather than having boats concentrate on one area. Sticking to these 3-year rotational areas in the Rappahannock River, this year on the 3-year rotation, Area 3 and Area 5 are up in the rotation. So sticking to that 3-year rotation, the Rappahannock, as well as having both the dredge open in the Pocomoke Sound and having patent tong fisheries available for different gear types across the Commonwealth. There are also some management measures discussed at the Shellfish Management Advisory Committees that were a little bit different from the recent management structures. That doesn't necessarily mean that they were good or bad. They were just different recommendations that I'm going to highlight from some of the things that have been approved by this commission over the last couple years. So one of them is opening multiple areas in the York River and Great Wicomico out of the 2 or 3-year rotation cycle to hand scrape gear. So the York River has been on a 3-year rotation and the Great Wicomico on a 2-year rotation. There's thoughts from industry that this market this year might be a little bit soft. So rather than concentrating maybe a little bit less effort on one area, opening areas congruently to be able to spread that effort out across multiple areas. With any of these, when you spread areas out or you don't have them in rotation, there's always the possibility these areas don't recover quite as quick. However, with any kind of concentrated effort, the regulations do allow for the commissioner or the agency to adaptively manage these areas. And if they're receiving too much effort or the resources starting to go down, we do have the ability to close these areas. The other one I wanted to highlight is extending geographic areas such as Rappahannock River and Great Wicomico by not overlapping the areas. What do I really mean by this? So there's 2 different ways to think about it when we talk about spreading effort out amongst different areas. So as I highlighted before, you can spread hand scrape gear out amongst different river systems. But when you're in a specific river system like the Rappahannock or Great Wicomico, there's only one area to go to. In past years, we've overlapped maybe 2 weeks in some of those areas. So if an area gets light, they have the ability to switch. Or if there's too much concentrated effort in one area, they can move. So again, this is not necessarily a good recommendation or bad. It's just a little bit different from what's been in the recent years. And of course, with all these, I'll point back that they chose to shorten some of these seasons rather than doing 2 weeks and overlapping, went down to a week and a half, thinking that if these areas can't hold up for a week and a half, probably shouldn't be on them anyway. And of course, if there's too much effort on them or the resource condition is starting to go down, just like I pointed out before, the commissioner of this agency has the ability to close these areas down in order to protect and preserve that resource. I'll keep going. So one of the other management measures that was recommended by the advisory committee was the opening up of the Great Wicomico and the Piankatank rivers to public oyster harvest. These are areas that haven't been open to commercial harvest in about 20 years. Most recently, they have since seen a seed program that ended in 2018. We do an annual oyster survey in this area in joint with Virginia Institute of Marine Science. These areas show more than enough resource currently to be able to support a fishery really with any kind of gear. I've got the map on the next slide, which will kind of help you sort through what areas we're talking about and what areas we're not talking about. But the Piankatank River was selected, and these areas currently count towards a long-standing oyster restoration goal. This is part of the 2014 Chesapeake Bay Agreement. SMAC did do a little bit of debating on these areas on whether or not to open these traditional areas to all at the same time, just to open up one to see what was there. So there was some good debate. Ultimately, they did vote on recommending opening all the areas, really to see what's out there, and that way it might help them develop either a rotational or some kind of adaptive management as we go into next year, where if they just open one area at a time, they might not have the full picture of what's available in the Piankatank. And also they chose to split up effort. If you only open up one rock, as we've talked about, all the effort is concentrated in one area, and this might allow for split up effort across the area. They also chose to open it beginning of March. The reason they chose these first 2 weeks in March is it has the most other concurrent areas open for that hand scrape fishery. So rather than being standalone and having the Piankatank being the only open area, it allows for boats to stay where they are, and maybe a few boats would be able to come and use that resource. So staff has received public comments on this. We've received public comments from NOAA, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. They do express concern of whether or not this area would allow them to continue to meet those restoration goals set out in the Chesapeake Bay Agreement. They also have some concerns about the proximity of these traditional state-managed areas and the proximity to newly constructed restoration reefs. And again, I'll show you on the map on the next slide. And of course, if the commission adopts any harvest areas in these areas, there's also the annual oyster replenishment plan that comes in front of the SMAC, as well as this commission, that we could adopt any kind of replenishment measures that may be necessary based on the harvest in that area. So as I promised, here's a map, and I'll explain these a little bit better. So these areas that are just in yellow, I'll highlight Palace's Bar, Bland Point, Cape Tune, and Burton Points. Those are traditional state-managed areas that when I say that there was a seed fishery in there, we've done a lot of replenishment. Those all met the requirements for restored under the 2014 Chesapeake Bay Agreement. What this means is it has enough shell base, it has enough year classes of oysters, and it meets all those restoration goals. The areas that are hashed outside are federally funded restoration reefs. They were built mostly with federal funds, as VMRC being the non-federal partner on there. They were built with large stone, habitat stone. They did not exist before. So they're not traditional state-managed areas. They did not exist before. They're newly constructed, and they were in order to restore that area. So as you hear, and you'll probably hear some public comments just to differentiate between the areas that are newly constructed with stone are the ones that are hashed that kind of go around these, and the mapping hasn't even been fully updated because this one goes around Burton Points like this. However, the areas that SMAC recommended opening are these yellow state-managed areas, and as you can read in the public comments, that there wasn't any necessarily pushback on whether opening these areas or not opening these areas. It's just how they might interact with long-term restoration goals, and that would not be determined by this staff or this committee. That is with the Chesapeake Bay goals. So there's also a recommendation to open areas in the Great Wicomico. So this map, they're looking at specifically Sandy Point, Shell Bar, as well as Haney Point. They're looking to open these areas to hand tong gear, most specifically in October, November, December. Not expected to be a lot of effort concentrated in it. Hand tong is generally a pretty non-disruptive gear. So we haven't reserved much comment on these areas as far as opening, closing, but there is a concern on how this harvest interacts with those restoration goals. Is a sound management program that this commission can adopt part of protecting it? Those are questions that will be answered down the road. So I just wanted you to be able to see in the chart what's actually being recommended by the advisory committee. You can see that they're looking in the Piankatank, both Bland Point, Cape Tune, and Burton Point, open a hand scrape veer for 10 days, 10 working days, 2 weeks. And then upriver in the more shallow area, Palace's Bar to be open for 2 weeks by hand tong. And then in the Great Waikamaco, a longer open season with that gear for October, November, and December. I just wanted to put back in front of you the SMAC recommendation from October 14th. These are the season lengths, the gears, and the areas. We did receive input from Virginia Institute of Marine Science. They did review the SMAC recommendations. They had no major concerns with anything that was recommended by the advisory committee. However, there are representatives from VIMS if you have any specific questions about maybe the areas or the science behind it, but there was no specific concerns about any of these recommendations. As I showed you before, there's a lot of things that are new but have a lot of staff consensus as far as the seed reporting and open areas. There are areas that proceed with a little bit of caution just because the management strategy has changed a little bit, whether their open is moving away from rotational areas and spreading effort out. It's just something that we'll have to adaptively manage and potentially close these areas, but we won't really know that until we see what effort is on those areas. And then, of course, the areas in the Piankatank and Great Waikamaco that staff has received a lot of public comment on. So staff is recommending that this commission adopt amendments to 720 pertaining to the restriction of oyster harvest to establish the 2024-2025 areas of public harvest and public harvest seasons. This adoption of the season should be based on the information you've heard from staff today, based on the recommendation from the Shellfish Management Advisory Committee, as well as the public comments that you've received in your packet from U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, from NOAA, from Chesapeake Bay Foundation, as well as comments from Virginia Institute of Marine Science, as well as any input you might hear from public testimony and public comment today. Staff is also recommending some of the oyster resource conservation measures. That both includes the on-run reporting of seed, as well as clean culling and harvesting seed in the same day. And I just wanted to leave this up so you can kind of see that as a total, but I'm happy to take any questions about any of these areas.
Any questions? Mr. Branson?
Thank you, Commissioner. Chief Kenyon, on these charts, this is what SMAC recommended and what your staff is endorsing?
Correct. These are consensus items.
Okay.
This is exactly what SMAC recommendation, but working with VIMS and looking at that, there's no major concerns. Some of the management is a little bit different, but everything in here can be adaptively managed.
And if you would, go back to the Piankatank River areas map that
The
you
map
had.
specifically?
That one. Those seed areas that you talk about it for the benefit of others, the seed harvest that you're talking about, and I understand from reading the material that this area is a little unique in that the water flow is propagates seed, oyster, striking oyster spat in that area. Is that right? Is that what I read correctly?
Yeah, so this area was chosen, one, based on the uniqueness, so you can see based on the shape of it, as the seed comes down, that it almost creates a little whirlpool to be able to recycle that seed. So it has been highlighted in many magazines a success on restoration. It does have a lot of good product on there, a lot of market size oysters. The surveys show that there's density enough to be able to support any kind of fishery that this commission chooses to open, and because they're state managed bottom, the commission does have the authority to open as well as adaptively manage and replenish the areas.
Army Corps in another, they had some concern about turning that into a marketable area other than for seed. I guess they didn't have any objection to keeping that as a seed harvest area, those 4 areas.
No, they didn't have any objection necessarily to opening it to harvest. They did have concerns about the proximity to the newly constructed
The
stone
federally
reefs.
funded areas around it.
Right,
which you-
those are made of stone. They do have larger habitat stone in there, so they do have a little preventative of people going out. But they did ask that law enforcement enforce these areas as well as they're being well marked. And they did have concerns about how harvest interacts with those restoration goals. That was all part of their public comments. However, it is unclear how those two things interact. We can manage these areas that they would still meet those metrics, but that it is not defined in the plan, so we are working down the line to discover not only how it impacts this, but also some future restoration.
Last question, Commissioner, I promise, for this session, is how will harvest of oysters in those 4 seed areas affect seed harvest in the future?
So these won't be open till seed. So this is a program that was run for about 2008 to 2018, where individuals were allowed to go in, and for every bushel of seed they were taken, they had to put 2 bushels of shell back on. Over time, all this was moved to private ground, and you could see the shell volume start to go down a little bit. So ultimately, that seed program was ended in 2018 for the resource, and the resource has shown to bounce back very well. So I wouldn't say that it necessarily would affect the seed harvest in this area, as there hasn't been any seed harvest or seed harvest program in 6 years.
That was a good question. I asked similar questions to some of the SMAC members. When they opened up the seed harvest, they took everything. They didn't just take the seed, they took the big ones too. What they're visiting now is just to open it for markets, correct? It's not open it for seed. Just the markets, leaving all the seed, all the smaller oysters.
What I observed was that this is a very good area for oyster propagation because of the current flow and the density. And my concern is that if we weren't, I didn't know we ended it in 2000. I was able to bushwhack Chief Kenyon this morning before the meeting, but so sorry, Adam, to hit you here with these questions. But that it's an important area for the restoration effort that I've read, and Great Wicomico maybe to a lesser extent, but this one especially because of the uniqueness of the water flow and the propagation and the striking of oysters on the shell that's there. So I'm a little concerned about opening this area, but again, you mentioned in March it'd be open for 2 weeks, and hopefully there's some watermen here that can shed a little more light from their perspective. But I appreciate the great work your staff does.
Mr. Heather?
This is not actually about the graph or anything. This is about it says in here for VAC 20-7 2015 control date license moratorium transferability and agents. Is that all included in what we're supposed to vote on right now?
So it's included, but not. The public advertisement for oyster management measures, so it really opens up a lot. Those are what you see in your draft reg is consistent with how it was last year. So we are not recommending changing any of the license requirements, nor was it a recommendation from SMAC. I don't know if that helps answer your question.
We didn't advertise that either. So I'm not, Kelsey, can we even, we can't move on any of that stuff that wasn't advertised, is that correct?
I mean, it was in our draft, so I mean.
No. Yeah, we can do less than what was advertised, but we can't do more.
The draft regulation, like I said, we have to work on that so far in advance. The biggest thing from that draft regulation is going for online seed, allowing for clean cull as well as seed in the same day. The rest of that draft regulation is created long before any SMAC recommendations or input is put in. So that's why I provide these charts and this information so that you know exactly what Wood is recommending outside of that draft regulation that needs to be put out early.
Probably would be a topic to send to SMAC.
Yeah, can I request that staff or SMAC look into the control date license moratorium transferability and agents? That's 3-paragraph section.
Sure, absolutely.
Just looking at it, the commission established a control date at 2014, July the 1st of 2014, in case anything ever happened. But in general, our waterman community is getting older, and
especially in the last 7 or 8 years. We've had a lot of newer, younger, full-time watermen get into it. I would be interested in seeing somebody talk about that control date, trying to push it up a little bit more so we don't push out the next generation of watermen. Please.
Mr. White?
I know, excuse me, I noticed in the public comment there was a recommendation to delay the decision until January to get more data. I mean, I always worry about kicking the can down the road, because is this a viable thing, and what are the pros and cons of what data could we get between now and then that would make anything different?
So between now and January, so we do an annual survey in the fall, so we have information about the condition of the resource that's on there as far as number of markets and what the substrate looks like. We will complete an updated survey sometime this fall in some of those areas, so we don't expect it, since there's no harvest, to really show anything different. Since the season that they recommended doesn't open until March, so there is time to come back in January if the advisory committee or this commission wanted to really look into some kind of adaptive management with rotations or anything like that. But that's something that we can address next year as well. If we find that there's good product and interest in this area, we can adaptively manage to rotational areas or work with SMAC on developing something else. So the only other information that we might gather is maybe some feedback on how these interact with the Chesapeake Bay goes through the to the GIT. But I can't guarantee we'll have that information as well. So by delaying this till January, there's potential to get a little bit more, but I think we'll get more information by the time this comes up in August 2025 on what this area might look like.
But your staff is recommended to accept it as it is now, no delay.
Staff is just recommending that this commission adopt a season based on this information that they're hearing.
Okay.
Mr. Harrison?
Thanks, Adam. I had a question about this table with regards to patent tong. So the number of months that you see there in this proposal, does that differ from previous years, and whether or not it's an increase or a decrease in the number of areas that are open to patent tong?
It does differ from previous years. It actually increases the number of days open in some areas. Patent tong is generally a less invasive gear, so that there could be some extensions, but this is what the advisory committee felt comfortable going forward, giving two different areas, specifically Deep Rock and Area 1, so that they had two different options to go back and forth, and especially overlapping them in case they wanted to adapt to that resource. But
thank you.
Any more questions? Well, that was easy. Thank you, Adam. Thank you. So, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this item? Oysters, come forward. Dr. Bean, I'm assuming you're sworn. Did you get sworn in earlier?
I did not.
All right. Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name for the record.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Roger Mann. I'm a professor of marine science at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science. There's a little bit of history here. I have been coming to this commission since 1985 to discuss oysters, so I'm fairly well entrenched in this. The stock assessment that Adam referred to, I started that program as a collaboration with Dr. James Wesson, who was at the commission here in 1995. So the data that supports all of the information that you see is an integral part of my life and has been for much of the last 30 years. That 30 years has encompassed some dark times in terms of this fishery, but it's also encompassed, I think, this period of regrowth over the last, nearly 20 years. A lot of it initially started and pioneered by Dr. Wesson, and moved on from there. And I would like to sort of comment on this commentary from SMAC. SMAC doesn't get many accolades. It should do. When I sit in the audience out here, when SMAC discusses this, I look at a group of people who sit at the table whose collective experience in the oyster industry comes to a couple of 100 years. These are well-experienced individuals. They care about this industry, they care about the resource, and they care about its perpetuation into the future, including, as Mr. Edley pointed out, leaving a resource for the next generation that comes along. There have been many contentious discussions over the years about how we manage these fisheries, but I will say this for SMAC. They are a remarkably collegial group. They care about each other, and they listen to each other, and they reach opinions by consensus. They may not always agree with one another. They may not always agree with what I think. But the end point of the day is that we get a good document by consensus where we might disagree on a few little things, but we all agree on the majority. The document that you see in front of you in this is not a one-off. This is the end product of at least 10 years of very thoughtful input. And I would like to acknowledge the SMAC and its members for their work in producing this, because as I say, they don't get accolades and they should do. This is a very sound plan. It looks forward into the future, and the minor tweaks that we've made to places like the Piankatank and the Great Wacomico, those are not typical, and I can understand why people back up a little bit and say, maybe we shouldn't do this. We don't do this lightly. When we talk about opening this very small area in the Piankatank, we have got 25 years of stock assessment data that tells us how those areas work. These are not decisions that are made in the absence of sound information. They are decisions that are made conservatively, and I underscore conservatively, based upon long-term information. And they're done in the context of trying to maintain this important industry and these people who are really important in our society. If we want to go into discussions about details on this, we can, but I think Adam's done a very good job in terms of presenting this to you. What I would urge you to do at this point is to adopt this protocol as forwarded to you by SMAC. Thank you.
Any questions? Because I'm sure you being the foremost expert, one of the foremost experts around, you're going to have some questions. So, Mr. Erskine?
Hey, Roger, good to see you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your comments. With regard to the new areas, specifically the Piankatank,
yes,
and those areas that are proposed to be open to hand scrape, the hydrodynamics, the larval recruitment in that system, opening it to hand scrape, those areas in particular are sensitive to any future larval recruitment, or how do you feel about opening those areas?
My initial response was to back up a little bit and think about it. But you know the Piankatank well, I do. The Piankatank is a complete gyre. From just below the bridge down to almost the mouth, the water goes round and round and round in circles. This has been documented for 40, 50 years. The late Jay Andrews wrote papers about how this works. Those areas, yes, they're important, but if you look at the broodstock, they're spread out throughout the river. You're nibbling away at one end of it. You're not taking all of it. As Commissioner Green pointed out, in the days of the seed fishery, it was always a little uncomfortable because you go in and take everything, and that's just the nature of the seed fishery. We're using relatively non-destructive gear here. We are selecting for markets. We're putting everything else back. The stuff in there grows a little bit more slowly than it does in, say, the James or the lower Rappahannock, but you've got high densities of small animals, and they contribute substantially. For those of us who are nerds about numbers, okay, you're going to get 30 seconds of this. If you sit and you look at the demographics of the populations in there, how many smalls, how many markets, how many big markets there are, and you ask, where do all the eggs come from? If you do the calculation, over 50% of the eggs come from animals that are below market size. There's a lot of small animals out there, and they contribute to that sort of egg pool because there are so many of them. We're talking a small proportion of the markets, nothing else. And yes, I can understand that we'd be a little worried about enforcement. We know what's going on out there. Everybody else does. You know you're going to be in the spotlight. So in answer to your question, no, I'm not worried about it at the moment.
Thank you.
Any more questions for me? I have one statement, and since you're up here. I'm surprised. I think it's the first time I've seen you since I've been commissioner come to the commission meeting and just get up and talk with the public. But I want to, over my career, not only at VMRC, but before coming to VMRC, you and Dr. Wesson have been absolute amazing to our resource and protecting it. And what you've done for the Commonwealth is very under-recognized.
Thank you,
in what
sir.
you've done. I look to you and Dr. Wesson often for expert advice on this matter, because you guys are the experts. I know we don't always agree. The one thing I will say about you and Dr. Wesson, even when we disagree, I haven't met two individuals anywhere, including VIMS or anywhere else, any more statesman-like than you are and Dr. Wesson. You guys have been amazing to work with, and keep it up. And it's a good example for you guys to train the future that comes behind you.
Thank you. While I have the microphone, I'm also going to be a little selfish. Sitting in the back of the room over there is Mr. Pruitt. Mr. Pruitt was commissioner when I first came here, and I must admit that coming to the South as a long-haired expatriate Englishman with a beard, I knew there was at least 2.5 strikes against me the first time I walked in the room. That gentleman was always very kind to me. And during my years at VIMS as both a professor, and I spent 10 years as the director of research there as well, so I got to talk to Mr. Pruitt about lots of things. I can remember us having agreements and disagreements, and then there was this thing called King William Reservoir. We had lots and lots of discussions about that. And those of you who've been here long enough will remember that that was a remarkably contentious debate. It was an enormous pleasure and one of the highlights of my career as an administrator to work with, I point with, not against, with Commissioner Pruitt. And I think that the accolades that you show him today, I will endorse them completely. So, Mr. Pruitt, thank you, sir. To you, again, thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of them. You know, Lyle and Dr. Lukerbach, guys, you guys have been amazing. You guys are absolute awesome statesmen, and I appreciate what you guys do as well. You've always answered the phone. That's amazing. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this matter? Please go forward. That's going to be a hard act to follow. I think Chairwoman Shannon is just, she didn't want to follow that one. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed. State your name for the record, please.
J.C. Hudgens. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Commissioner Green. Good morning, Associate Commissioners, and welcome new board appointees. My name is J.C. Hudgens. I'm a working waterman from Matthews. I am a member of SMAC, former chairman of SMAC, and I'm happy today to come before you and explain to you why I think we should support our shellfish plan for next year. The Virginia Watermen's Association, which I'm president of, recommends and supports SMAC's proposed draft for the 2024-2025 oyster season. Less the Bianca tank. I would like to add that on at the end. I would like to talk and address that a little bit different, if y'all would allow me. Please note in the oyster season in the Rappahannock in Area 5, if you look at your draft, and Area James River, for the month of October, we had originally, staff had proposed to start the season the 1st of October. And I guess we kind of done a little conservation equivalency maybe in SMAC, and we elected to drop that down to the 15th in the James River and in Area 5. And I think that that was mainly due to expected market conditions, to crab potting, and to some other factors that we felt like probably starting the 1st of the month wasn't in the best interest of the fishery. So we did make some adjustments to that. I just want to let you know that's what SMAC wanted. I would certainly support everything that SMAC has done. They've done a great job on this oyster fishery. So I would like to now talk to you a little bit about the Piankatank River. If Adam, could I get you to pull up the Piankatank screen?
All right, now,
Okay.
y'all do realize you're supposed to have 3 minutes. I ain't set the time on y'all yet.
Okay,
so, but Dr. Mann got a little long-winded, so don't make me break up my time.
Okay.
I gave him 3 extra minutes because he mentioned
Okay,
Bill Brooks.
thank you, Commissioner. And Commissioners, if you would, we actually, it doesn't show it on here, but right to the east of Palace's Bar is Bland Point and Iron Point. In SMAC, we did draw an imaginary demarcation line to separate Hand Tongue from Hand Scrape. So I just want y'all to, it's not on there, but I want y'all to be aware of that. We done this so we could separate the two types of gear, the Hand Scrape and the Hand Tongue. Palace's Bar would be shallow water, would be considered for Hand Tongue. Everything east of the line, which are the 3 areas that we were talking about, that's all deep water. You can't Hand Tongue there, and we would hand scrape that particular area. I know we had originally recognized 3 areas of potential harvest east of that demarcation line. It was Bland Point, the area over on the Middlesex side, Cape Toon down in the bottom, and all the way to your right, Burton's Point. And I would like to make a note too, and Adam did speak about this, that none of those 3 rocks were built with federal money. Only the outlying checkered area was done with federal money. So this is state money. This is something the Waterman has done, and I think we need to look at that, and so you're aware of that. The Virginia Waterman Association, we would like to recommend a little change in this from SMAC. We need to go back in January and maybe revisit this, but this is the way we feel about it right now. We would recommend 1 area for harvest this year, which would be Burton's Point for hand scrape. And you'd have the area for Palace's Bar for Hand Tongue. Contingent on putting the other 2 areas in a 3-year rotation. So next year we come back, we might go to Cape Toon, we'll take a look at that, and then the following year we'll go to Bland Point. This would give us an opportunity to look at these areas, which we think are in very good shape. A lot of market oysters there, so I think we're definitely going to have a good fishery there. So I would certainly hope that y'all could see what I was doing there. I think that's probably the best thing for us to do from a conservation standpoint. I think this will only be for 15 days. It'll be 10 days of harvest. The 2 weeks in March, first 2 weeks in March, which coincides with Area 3 in the Rappahannock River. So what's that going to do? That's going to reduce it's going to make it not a standalone area, but hopefully it'll provide some relief from the work that's going to be done in Area 3. I think one thing I want to address, Commissioner Branscombe, you were asking about seed harvest compared to market harvest. Well, I guess probably the best way I can put it to you, being a waterman, is if you go take up seed, they pay you $8 a bushel to take up the seed. If you go harvest market oysters, you get approximately $40 a bushel. So if you look at the economic value to the waterman and to the state of Virginia, to the Commonwealth, that's the reason why we should harvest market size oysters, which the survey says are very plentiful now. So I think, so.
Is there any questions? Mr. Erskine?
JC, thank you. A question about the 3 areas that are on the proposal from SMAC. Why is the Waterman Association recommending only Burton Point versus opening the other 2?
Well, we feel like to start, I mean, we could start anywhere, but we just felt like Burton's Point was a good starting point. Not necessarily It might be a little better area. It's hard to say. I don't think they've surveyed it this year yet, and we're kind of waiting for that. So we're waiting on that information to come through. So it was just a recommendation from me, and I know that Piankatank pretty good because I live there. I live in Matthews. So that was, we could very well start at Cape Toon and rotate the other two. But I think it's important that we do a rotation there because regardless of the time length involved, I think that will give us a chance to replenish, to take a look at it at the end of the season and to see how we are doing as far as what we need to do for replenishment.
As a follow-up, Mr. Commissioner, so do you roughly know the acreage in that area?
All three areas, I know Cape Toon and Burton's Point are around 35 to 40 acres. Is that right, Adam? Yeah. And I think Bland Point might be a little bit smaller, 30 acres. So it's a pretty good size area. Yeah.
Mr. Branson?
Yeah, Jesse, my question was about how harvesting marketable oysters could affect the seed or vice versa in those areas. If we opened up all of them at the same time. So what your recommendation is to basically, for lack of a better word, table the approval of Piankatank to a later date when you can assess the fall, the data that Adam talked about, except for Burton Point, open Burton Point in March, not the other areas? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
And put them in some kind of rotation?
Exactly, yeah. And I'm doing this kind of because this wasn't what SMAC passed.
The benefit of doing that would be what?
Well, it would allow the opportunity to look at the rock that we just worked for 2 weeks this year, whichever one it might be. You can take a look at it and see what the survey, you surveyed before, you surveyed after, so you see what amount of oysters you have there. And then it would give you an opportunity to go to the next rock the next year in the rotation, and you would be allowed, would give you an opportunity to also do that. So we just felt like, and this is not, SMAC did pass the 3 areas, but after talking with a lot of people on this situation, and there was a fair amount of public opposition to it, I'm sure y'all know. And so I think from a conservation standpoint and from the waterman's standpoint, I think we would be best suited to just reduce it down to one area right now, and January go back, talk about a rotation if that's what we need to do to get it passed in SMAC, because that has not been passed in SMAC. So that was, and this is just my feelings on it today.
No, it kind of had, my question was more to the areas look small, in my opinion, too small to put into a rotation, especially the first year for 10 days working on it. I think you would get more of it, more knowledge from people working on all 3 bars versus just one. But,
Any more questions, Mr. Speaker? Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate you. Next person would like to speak. Come on, Madam Chairwoman. Please state your name for the record.
Jackie Shannon.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Proceed.
Thank you. I'm with Chesapeake Bay Foundation and current chair of the Shellfish Management Advisory Committee. First, I just really want to thank the Commission and the Shellfish Management Advisory Committee for delving into this issue. This is a unique opportunity to reopen parts of the river, and I think this is a wonderful time for the Commonwealth to make a very thoughtful decision about it. I'll echo some of the points, try not to be redundant, what JC said, but CBF is supportive of the controlled expansion of harvest areas in the Piankatank River with the following recommendations. The 2024-2025 harvest season includes 2 total harvest areas in the Piankatank River, specifically Palace's Bar for hand tonging and Burton's Point A for hand scrape. The harvest season does not extend 10 working days, has been stated. VMRC implements a replenishment plan on new harvest areas as needed per the annual survey. Recognizing, of course, the commissioner can adapt the season for any measure. Let's see, we'd love to see a detailed review of the impacts of this harvest in the summer of 2025. And since the Shellfish Management Advisory Committee does favor a March season, we feel like extending or pushing back the decision until January not necessarily to collect more data, but maybe an opportunity for the Shellfish Management Advisory Committee to convene as a work group and look at the future of what a rotational harvest looks like, which is what Chesapeake Bay Foundation is in support of. So that plan, again, could include proposals for rotational harvesting on other Piankatank harvest areas in future seasons. So that's all I have. Happy to take questions.
Any questions, Speaker? You did good, thank you.
Thank you.
Minute and a half, too, that was pretty long. That's the most impressive part there, Ms. Shannon. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this matter? Please come forward. State your name for the record, please.
I'm Andrew Larkin.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
Thank you. As I mentioned, I'm Andrew Larkin, and I work for the NOAA Chesapeake Bay office. I wanted to provide comments, not in opposition or support to the recommendations to open the previously closed areas in the Piankatank and the Great Wicomico, but just to provide some information for the commission to consider. My agency, NOAA, and the Army Corps of Engineers have already submitted a joint letter providing some of these comments. This is just a brief summary of those. So, as you know, Virginia, through VMRC, has been a leader in accomplishing the Chesapeake Bay Watershed Agreement goals of restoring oyster populations in 10 tributaries by the year 2025. As this commission knows, oysters provide critical habitat for commercial and recreational fish species, as well as filtering and cleaning our tidal waters. MRC's worked in partnership with federal agencies like mine, NOAA, and the Army Corps to share project costs and to complete restoration projects in 5 tributaries to date, including the Great Wicomico and the Piankatank. Some of the reef areas that SMACS recommended opening these rivers include areas that were already considered restored because they met certain metrics that were agreed to by the Chesapeake Bay program that relate to the numbers of restored acres and also to reef health. Opening these reefs to harvest could result in the loss of oyster reef habitat acreage and the benefits that these acreage provides. The potential loss could also affect whether these tributaries will continue to meet those metrics I mentioned and continue to count towards meeting the restored tributary goals under the Chesapeake Bay Agreement. We note that some of the proposed new harvest areas in the Piankatank and the Great Wicomico are located in close proximity to federally funded restored reef projects. Adam mentioned some of those. We'd be extremely grateful if MRC could use the law enforcement tools at your disposal to ensure that those sanctuary reef areas are protected. Thank you.
Any questions from the speaker?
Thank you, Mr. Larkin. A question about the Burton Point that's on the southern part of that. Adam indicated that the federally managed areas now encompass that Burton Point. Is that correct? Not the way the map depicts it?
I think that's right, Adam. If I'm not
I think the lower end is open.
They curl around this side here, there.
There you go. See, the lower end is open. The rest of
Okay,
it
so the east end is up. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions?
Any more questions? Thank you, sir. Thank you. I'll, after everybody speaks, I'll make a comment about law enforcement on this. I know that was a concern from NOAA, Army Corps, Bay Foundation, and Nature Conservancy. It's always a conversation that we have. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this matter? Or Mr. Kelly? Please state your name for the record and the microphone.
Tom Kellen.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, sir.
Proceed.
Before I start, Mr. Commissioner, Associate Commissioners, I'd like to thank Chief Kenyon, the VIM staff, my fellow SBAC members, Chairwoman Shannon, Commissioner Green, and Secretary Travis Boyles. This was the most interactive SMAC process that I've seen in my 28 years that I've been involved. I've never seen a Secretary of Natural Resources attend an SMAC meeting, nor, no disrespect, never have I seen a commissioner at both meetings. So I want to thank everyone involved for that. This season, I think you've heard the testimony. It's been a lot of thought and expertise that went in. I would respectfully and humbly ask that you support the draft as proposed. I am also in agreement on the Piankatank that we should go with the Burton Bar area and make a decision on that today. and then leave the door open for the other two areas in the rotational discussion. But I have a unique fondness for the Pianki Tank. Our company has been involved since 1998 with both the seed programs as well as the restoration, both federally as well as state work. And I can say we've seen a lot of positives in the Pianki Tank. I think the decision that staff made in 2018 to, that Deputy Chief Button made to close the seed fishery was the right thing to do. At the time, there were several thousand bushels of seed coming out of the Pianki Tank. You've heard the testimony. We hear seed and we think of baby oysters. Seed in this case consisted of shell culch, spat, small, and market oysters. So essentially, you took it all. It was beginning to show in the brown shell volume in that area, and it was the right decision. I also believe today, based on stock assessments and the work that VIMS and BMRC has done, we have a very adequate market resource there. To sort of put in perspective what we're asking for here, if you went with the Burton's bar, you're looking at less than 8% of the total restored volume there. So if we're thinking we're going to do volume, do damage in that minute amount of harvest, I think we've got bigger issues than just whether we harvest that area. Lastly, we've heard a lot about enforcement. I completely support. I will stand before you and say I would never support harvesting any of the federally constructed restored areas, and likewise would heavily recommend enforcing, as I know the commissioner would have this agency do, law enforcement. And lastly, our company was involved with a lot of restoration. This is the material that's used for the restoration of the federal areas. We also used some clean crushed concrete about this size or a little larger. Point being that Commissioner Brains.
Can I have that rock to pass around, please?
Absolutely.
You just lost it. It's evidence now.
Well, at least you knew I wasn't going to throw it at you anyway.
How did you get it past Gerald? He's sitting here looking at his phone and he's held up a rock. Oh, Lord, my bodyguard is falling down.
Point being, some of the commissioners, Erskine, Branscombe, Headley, that's been involved with or seen the harvest of oysters, Commissioner Preston, you would know that trying to harvest with a hand scrape in that material is not going to be very effective. And the good thing for law enforcement is when someone does do it, they'll be easy to find. So, I do take comfort in this, that we do have that material that the reefs are built out of. And you have that size material with hopefully a ball of oysters around it. So, and lastly, there have been a lot of accolades passed out, and Commissioner Green, you touched on it, but Commissioner Pruitt and Roger Mann spoke today. Both of them, I think it's incumbent to know that when they started, and I started my career in the oyster industry in 1995, we had a harvest of 19,000 bushels. So we basically had no industry. And fortunately today, the good Lord's provided us with a resource that we're able to have these discussions. And I'd like to thank both of you for your leadership in those very troublesome days and to get us where we're at today. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Headley?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Cullum. You say the Pianki Tank part, you would like just the Burton Point to be opened in March, only that one itself. JC's spoke on behalf of it too. The other two areas that are looking to be open at the same time as SMAC discussed, would they be looked at a later meeting this year, or they go into a rotation?
I think it would be prudent to have a discussion to talk about that, whether it's a rotation or whether we find they all should be open at the same time. The Burton Point idea, in my mind, was a compromise with the federal partners and with the NGOs, but I think a later discussion. But to Commissioner White's point, I don't think there's a thing we're going to learn between now and January to make a decision on open and Burton Point. I think it's a good suggestion to get started with.
While he's standing there, could I ask Mr. Hudgens if he is in agreement?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions for the speaker? Mr. Erskine?
Yes, sir. Thanks, Tommy. I'm wondering if you could give a perspective with your experience at SMAC, whether or not the committee has had a conversation about vessel monitoring?
It has come up not directly in SMAC discussions, but amongst several members of the committee. And I think we saw it today in the earlier cases, and thank you very much for your position that was taken with the bad actors. But the GPS system that was placed on the boat that we heard testimony, I think that's an example of what vessel monitoring should accomplish. So no, we have not, but I think it would be a discussion that could be had.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this matter before I care for the commission? I am going to make a few comments. First, on the historical nature and the pioneers of this. You know, you got Lyle in here, you got Roger Mann, Lyle Varnell. Raise your hand, Lyle, for people that don't know who you are. You got Lyle Varnell, Roger Mann, and Commissioner Bill Pruitt in here. There are two people that are missing that were key in this. It's Dr. Lukenbach and Dr. Wesson. Where are we at now by the basic foundation that you individuals laid, every single one of y'all? I mean, you guys are still doing the stock assessment. Make no mistake about it. Nobody's blindfolded and doesn't know Dr. Wesson has still got his finger on the pulse of the oyster in the Chesapeake Bay. He will not, he loves to hunt and do things, but he keeps his finger on the pulse. You guys, your open-minded way of thinking, your being a student of your craft and willingness to learn and continuously learn with the environment has proven what collaboration looks like with higher education research institutions, an agency like this, and the private industry. We got two members here now. We got Kim Husky and Tommy Kellum right there that are prime examples of industry getting involved with you guys and helping us constantly not miss the boat. And I do not only appreciate that, that is a model for everybody in the country to look at, where we're at. Now, I understand we're going to constantly be super conservative and obviously disagree on some things, but make no mistake about it. You guys are all doing a great job. The NGOs are doing a great job. I appreciate it. Some of y'all let carpal tunnel writing letters on me. That's okay, but I really do read them and appreciate it. So I want to hear your perspective. Everybody's welcome to my table. Number two, law enforcement will be present. You will see law enforcement like you've never seen it. And if you don't believe me, go to the Pianka tank with a drudge on your boat and march and find out. So it will be there. So the days of we haven't seen people are gone. You will see them. Get used to them. So that being said, matters before the commission.
I'd like to put forth a motion to be discussed before I get second, but to accept staff recommendation with the exception of the Pianka tank to open Burton's Point as presented by Chief Kenyon and defer consideration of the other three areas to a later date.
Second. I got a motion to now is this, what about which was the Palaces was the hand-tong, so no hand-tong area? Is that correct? Is that what the motion is? No just a hand scrape area in Burton Point?
No, to open Burton's Point.
Burton Point.
And consider the other areas at a later date, mainly, most likely January. Or whenever SMAC, the chief, and other interested parties can get together to discuss.
You don't want to keep open this regulation but 30 times.
Does that still mean that the hand-tong area is open?
That's what I'm trying to ask. So no hand-tong area, because that one's above the line that JC.
Burton's Point is hand scrape.
I know, but the Palaces is hand-tong, and what JC mentioned was the hand-tong area and only for Palaces for hand-tong and only Burton Point for hand scrape. None of the other hand scrape portions. Is that correct? Is that correct? Is that what you did? Yeah. And so do you want the hand-tong one in there?
Yes.
Okay.
So it'd be hand scrape in Burton's Point and Palaces Bar hand tong.
Okay. All right.
shout.
And I have a second from Mr. White.
And just to clarify, that includes staff recommendations on those conservation measures, including online harvesting and clean cull, as well as the SMAC recommendation you see in front of you with the modified Piankatank area.
What you do is you take off the Bland Point and Cape Toon.
Just want to
Everything else is
clarify
presented.
that that's what it was.
And Mr. White, you're okay with that? We got a sec- So I have a second. Further discussion? Mr. Headley?
Can I call Mr. Kellum back up?
Absolutely. I can't control the board right now, it seems like. I'm losing my grip.
Need I ask?
State your name. He ain't got no rock this time. Just state your name for the record. You already sworn. I just checked your hands. You didn't have no rocks this time.
Tommy Kellum.
Mr. Kellum, the Larson's Bay area for Patton Tong in 3 months. It was open last year for 3 months too. Mr. Bransom extended it. But the harvest was very, very minimal because where the line was drawn outside the working area that they could work in weren't any marketable oysters. Should it be readjusted so we could actually have this as a usable area?
I think if we're gonna have a usable area, it needs to be investigated that the line be adjusted. That is referred to as a closed area. It's been an area that's been closed. To my knowledge, it's not a designated sanctuary, it's just a closed area. If you're gonna have a meaningful harvest in that area, it's gonna take adjustment of the line to allow access to some of the resource there.
How do we go about doing that, Commissioner?
Well, I mean, I have a motion and a second to basically adopt it like it is, take off Cape Toon and Bland.
This slipped my mind.
But you got halfway through the game and then you brought up, we're like 1 minute left in the fourth quarter and you throw a Hail Mary.
May I?
Yes, sir, proceed.
I would suggest that sending that, you've got a very legitimate point, and I would suggest sending that back to SMAC and have something meaningful come out of that as far as
That's what's gonna be about.
to answer your point, because it's a very valid point.
Perfect. So we got two things you're recommending to go back to SMAC. This and the change the date, Larson's Bay, and change the date or modify the date on limited entry.
Yes, sir.
Got that, Chief King? So, back to business at hand. We have a motion to accept what you see on the board, take off Bland and Cape Toon for the oyster. I have a second from Mr. White. Is there any further discussion?
I have a comment.
Okay, Mr. Hand.
So, if it just opened up Burton's Point, in the Patton Tong area, it seems to me there'll be more concentration, and it could be worked much more than if the whole area was open. And if, as that's gonna be closely studied to look at what happens in the future, the results may be a little skewed because that's the only place if people wanna go into the Piankatank. So, Mr. Headley, I think you brought up that point earlier. I'll make a little bit for you.
He would like to comment on
Yeah,
it.
please.
Proceed.
What they've done here as far as lake industry and a waterman's perspective is all at the same time they've spread everybody out. Which, the way we look at it, it makes it a whole lot better and a whole lot easier to work on rocks. You have a whole lot less footprint on this rock and all the rest of them are the same. I personally wouldn't have any concern with Burton Point being open because you also have Area 3 on the Rappahannock at the same time, right around the corner that's open, which is a whole lot bigger area where more boats are gonna stay. And other areas all up and down the whole bay at the same time. Every major river has areas open at the same time.
Well, that's an important point.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and as I see it, we have till January for.
If you want to, if you want
to consider that.
Dr. Mann had it, he hit the nail on the head when he worked on this. You look, there's no reason for everybody to leave home and run to one area now, because there's areas close to home that are open that have a significant density according to the survey, to where they don't need to, they can still get their 8 bushels where they're at. There's no need for them to drive miles away somewhere. So I think that's one notable thing here. And Commissioner Headley said it best, you know, obviously your environmental footprint here is probably not going to be as deep due to the fact in one area, because all the other areas are open. There's no need for everybody to run there. Any more questions?
Mr. Commissioner?
Yes, sir.
I have a question. I know we have a motion and a second, but I just noticed the Caratoman Hand-Tong area is proposed for hand scrape. Is that new, or is that still last?
It's something that was new last year when the commission adopted it. It's not an area that's regularly open, but it was open last year, and it was a consensus item coming out of the SMAC to do exactly what Associate Commissioner Headley said, and to be able to split up effort in that area.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions? So we have a motion from Mr. Branson. Everything you see up there minus Cape Toon and Bland's. We have a second from Mr. White. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? I see your hands if you're opposed. Is anyone going to abstain? All right, motion carries unanimously. Great work, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Adam. All right, now we're open to public comment. Jamie, we're gonna set the timer. I'm running out of time, guys. Anyone wish to speak to public comment? You got 3 minutes. Come forward, please. State your name for the record, please.
Tommy Kellum, Virginia Seafood Council. Mr. Commissioner, Chief Kenyon, on behalf of the entire shellfish industry and 4 generations of the Kellum family, I'd like to recognize the service on the impending retirement of Miss Deborah Jenkins. Deborah's been, I believe, 35 years with the agency, an institutional asset, and we're going to miss her, and Godspeed in her retirement, but I would like the minutes to reflect our appreciation of her service to this agency and to the Commonwealth of Virginia. Thank you.
Mr. Kellum. You stole my thunder there. I was going to do that at the end of the meeting. She's not here today, but, you know, everybody, you hear this adage from a lot of people that everyone's replaceable. I hear that all the time. This is one of the things I keep trying to get in the head of Rachel Peabody, my director of policy here. Everybody's not replaceable. People think it is, and it's not true. And Deborah Jenkins is one. I don't care who you find. You can scour the earth. You're not going to find somebody that can do, will do what she's done for this agency in the Commonwealth. And I don't know what we're going to do in the meantime. But absolutely, she is a valuable resource and has been for many years. You can tell how valuable she is when she goes on vacation. Because for some reason, nobody will do her job. So she's going to be missed, and I don't think there's a soul that's worked with her that would say otherwise. Mr. Pruitt, come forward, please.
I can't believe I'm doing this, but
I get to do this 2 times in one day. Most people don't know what this is, but you do. What's your pleasure, sir?
I thought I was down here today because of Deborah's retirement. And now that I know, I'm here for it. I wish she was here. I hired Deborah. And it was a great decision. She was a wonderful person to work with, and I wish you were here today. And also, while I had the podium, I didn't mention earlier, I was so surprised that I didn't have any thoughts together. But I want to speak to the commission now. I was privileged to serve with a lot of members, and they were all like you. They came from different walks of life, and to serve in this public service capacity. Your business, most of you have jobs, and it's a great commitment. And I was privileged to work with them, with all of you. And I don't know you, some of you I don't know, some of you I do. But I know when a governor considers these appointments, it's not taken lightly. Character is one of the big ingredients. And I have seen that character displayed over the years, over 23 and a half years. And I can see it today. I know why you were picked. You were picked because of your character and because of your ability and your past. And I compliment you on that, on your appointments, all of you. There is no higher calling than public service. Whether it's in the ministry, the gospel ministry, or whether it's in serving your fellow man on a daily basis. So it's a very important job you have. I admire all of you. And thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That's gonna be a hard act to follow too, right? He set the bar mighty high for commissioner, didn't he? Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name for the record, please.
My name's Daryl Hurley. I have three leases in Wachapreague, Virginia, over on the Eastern Shore, and I've had them ever since my early 20s. I think it's 12 or 13 years, and they're the only leases I've ever had. Whole life we've worked them. Families worked them. Mr. Sayers, he's growing clams for Cherry Stone on there, and we had some kind of mail discrepancy, and my check didn't get here, and the certified letter that BMRC sent me, I didn't receive. It was returned back to them, and then so what I was told is like the 1st of July I lost my leases, and it's a crucial to my family and everything to try to get these leases back. And I'm just trying to figure out a solution.
Good. Kelsey, I'm assuming he's coming before the commission for some sort of relief.
Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, unlike missing like license payment or something, this is something that is mandated by code, not regulation. 18.2620 says any ground or area which becomes delinquent shall be open and available to be leased after the following conditions have been met. Now, I will say the conditions, the payments are due September 1st of each year. So this particular payment would have been due September 1st of 2023. But a lease does not become delinquent and open and available to be leased until after the person has been notified in writing on September 1st, and then mailed a second notice by certified mail on June 1st of the following year. And then the person holding the lease does not pay all rents and penalties due on or before June 30th of the following year. So there's lease is not going to become delinquent and open just because someone is a little bit late in my point. However, this is a requirement in code. It says it shall be open and available to be leased after these things are met. I don't think this is something that the commission can override since it is in code.
So we have a comment from council. Mr. Erskine.
I don't know, this might be addressed to staff, I guess, but the public testimony regarded certified mail. Did you get return notice that somebody had signed for that certified?
Yes, so just a little bit of background, exactly what Kelsey pointed to. The requirements for notification are outlined in 282620. All those based on our records were all sent, including that certified letter. We sent a certified letter to the address that Mr. Hurley provided. That did get returned to sender, that he did not receive it. However, the code requirements just require that we send it certified, and we did use the mailing address that he has had on file. We also have the phone records where we tried to contact him based on the phone number that he provided as well. So as staff, we talked a lot about Deborah Jenkins. She has done her due diligence on this one, just like she does everything else. But the records line up that the code was followed.
As a follow-up for Chief Kenyon, so are the leases this gentleman's referring to, are they now vacant and available for him to reapply?
Unfortunately, that would normally be a path forward, except for another individual has come and applied for it, and there's another section of code 605 that requires the agency to address those applications in the order which they're received. So there is another individual who has recognized that vacant ground and does have an active application in that area.
Okay, thank you.
I think he put in for two of my leases and then two of someone else's leases that, you know, he kind of joined. It was roughly around 130 acres there, and I think he's put in for 88. You know, like I said, two of the leases were never mine. So, you know, even if I had, you know, would be able to get my 133 back, you know, that would still leave him with whatever, you know, he's had. I mean, he's put in ground before me. I mean, I've never opposed anything. I've worked with VIM since I've had the ground. They've brought the students out there. They've done screw bore studies. They planted eelgrass. Like I said, I've never opposed anybody's anything. It's just, like I said, my family has got a lot of hard work and money invested out here, and you know, so does this man.
I don't know, I mean, I'll defer back to Kelsey. I think the code right here will exceed the authority of this commission, am I correct? There's really, we can't violate code.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so I would put this matter before the commission, but I don't have the authority.
Do you have any advice of what, can I go to a higher authority?
Kelsey, I don't know, he can't, I don't know if that's even appealable to circuit court or civil court or something like that.
I don't know, and I can't give legal advice, and I don't think the commission can either.
Yes, I mean, unfortunately, we're bound by code and we just don't have the authority.
Mr. Commissioner, at the least, this gentleman could protest the lease that has been applied for, is that correct? And that would force that application to come before the commission, is that correct?
That is correct, but I'm not advising protesters.
Well, I got a lot of reason too.
So,
you know,
but-
I mean, if I'm not just a landowner or something like that, like I said, this has been my.
If that's the course of action you have, I would suggest you get with Chief Kenyon at some point and talk with him about that, but I'm not gonna get in the middle of advising opposition or support to anything. I stay neutral. So, I appreciate your time, but unfortunately, there's nothing we can do here as the commission.
Have you talked to a lawyer?
Not yet. This was my first.
I think we're dangerously getting towards legal advice. Dangerously,
Well, I'm just-
dangerously getting close to
That's a
legal advice.
question.
Good. That is a question. Good job. Good question. Obviously, Mr. White has a lot of experience. But no, we can't advise you at this point. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for your time. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak during public comment on an item that's not on the agenda? Thank you. All right, Chief Gear, looks like you're up and running.
Was hoping to have you out by lunch, and I still might make it.
Yeah, man, I know. Come on, let's roll.
That would be.
We got 30 minutes to get ready.
Make sure to put the clock on him.
I know, right? 3 minutes?
I might make it. I don't know. Okay. Why is it not going to Zoom? I can't figure out how to activate this.
Randy's Jeopardy theme needs to be
I
played.
found it, never mind. Okay, there we go. All right, I used up 2 of my minutes, I'm sorry about
That's
that.
all right.
Good morning, good morning, everybody. This is a public hearing for amendments to Chapter 4 VAC 20-490-10 pertaining to sharks, specifically ocean white-tip sharks, to change the definition to be compliant with National Marine Fisheries Service. The change will make us maintain us in consistency in Virginia state waters with federal waters. Presently, oceanic white tips are listed as threatened on the endangered species list, and our specific changes are we're moving it from the list that were permitted harvest to the list that's prohibited. So, real simple thing. And those changes are as follows. It's in chapter section 20 of definitions, which is on page 2 to 4 through the regulations. And all we're really doing is taking it out of the permitted, commercial permitted harvest. We're striking it out there and placing it in the commercial prohibited shark list of species. And under the recreational permitted sharks, we're taking it out. There's if you look at that regulation, there's a whole list of shark species there. And we're putting it in the prohibited shark species. And this is just so we can be compliant with National Marine Fisheries Service. And our recommendation, staff recommends the commission amend Chapter 4 VAC 20-490-10 pertaining to sharks to move oceanic white-tip sharks from the commercial and recreationally permitted shark species list to the commercially and recreationally prohibited shark species list in the definition section of the regulation, which is section 20.
Any questions for Chief Gear?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Henry.
Really?
Yeah. White tip shark. I've never actually heard of a commercial fishery for it.
We have it listed, we have all the shark species listed just in case, but it's rare if ever, but we have all the species on the Atlantic coast we have listed in our regulation. So that's why, I think there's 44 species in this regulation pertaining to sharks. And that's just one of them.
Any more questions? Thank you, man. Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this matter? No shark takers, huh? All right, that being said, matters before the commission.
Move to approve.
Got a motion to approve, Mr. Branson, staff recommendations. Got a second from Mr. Erskine. Any further discussion? Is there anyone that opposes this motion? That's been said. Anyone that wants to abstain? Motion carries unanimously.
All right, next item. Here we go. All right, this is recommendations from the Commercial Fishing Advisory Board. The board is responsible for allocating funds from our Marine Fishing Improvement Fund. The board can have up to 12 members, and they advise the commission on expenditures to that fund. And right now, we have 9 members, and they're listed here. The board met on August 13th here at VMRC to consider 2 applications for funding. And just to give you a brief idea about the Marine Fishing Improvement Fund, it's section code 28.2-208. That decimal's not there, I made a mistake there. The highlighted section is below is what that money can be used for. So it's pretty broad. We can use it for a lot of things. Research, legislative actions we have to do, mandatory reporting, stocks assessments, things like that, but it's pretty broad. This is 28.2-201, 208.1 of the code for the advisory committee, and it just spells out what their duties are and their responsibilities. They serve 3-year terms and what they're supposed to be doing. Okay. Our first project that we want to consider today is a commercial fisheries offshore ocean planning. It's a continuation of funding we provided in the past. The request for $176,040 from Todd Janeski of Virginia Commonwealth University. And this project will provide funds for a manager to serve as the Virginia ocean-based fisheries coordinator for here at VMRC. They'll provide direct support to the agency on ocean fisheries issues, primarily commercial fisheries, and they'll provide advice on issues related to commercial fisheries and offshore wind energy development. It also includes funding for subcontractors for technical help and legal assistance. The CFAB received 7 comments in support of this program, and the CVAB voted unanimously to recommend this funded project. And the second one is a continuation of a project we've been funding for a number of years. It's biological monitoring of river herring through Eric Hilton at VIMS. It's additional project funds. We fund this project every year about in the tune of about $40,000. Because of some clerical errors with indirect and match, the $8,000 was left off the grant, so they were only funded $32,000 this year. So they're requesting that additional $8,000. So the CFAB voted and recommended funding this project as well. So all total, the Commercial Fishing Advisory Board recommends funding both of these requests totaling $184,040 from the Marine Fishing Improvement Fund.
Thank you, Pat. Any questions for Chief here? Any questions? Well, thank you, Pat. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on the Commercial Fishing Advisory Board recommendation for funding from the Marine Fishing Improvement Fund? All right, that being said, matter is before the commission.
Motion to approve funding both requests.
Got a motion to approve both funding?
Second.
From Hadley. Commissioner Hadley got a second from Ms. Edwards. Is there any further discussion? Is there anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Pat. You did a great job. And I would like to note that Todd Janeski's out there. Please raise your hand, Todd. He's done fabulous work, and if you guys want to know the work he's done for what we paid him as board members, please call me and I'll get you in contact with your Director of Policy, Rachel, or I can tell you myself, and we can go over what he's done. He's done a fabulous job for the commission. And believe you me, as Rachel Peabody can attest to, that is a heavy load of work. It is ridiculous. We're talking lawyers and all kinds of analysts. It's a lot. He travels all up and down the East Coast for us, taking care of this. This is something that it's probably a job nobody wants. So, but thank you, Todd. You do a great job, an amazing job, and I'm honored to have you part of our team. That being said, 2 items I wanted to go over before we close out. Kelsey, I don't know if I have to put this to a vote or not, but I want to put notice out that our October meeting will be held on Monday, the 28th of October. This is so Chief Gear and I can attend because we have ASMSC duties. And I want to merge December and November's meeting to December 3rd, Tuesday, December 3rd. Do I need to do a vote on that, or can I just announce that here? Kelsey? I think last time we announced it. But we've already done that. So I wouldn't have picked. All right, on the record, is there any board members that has objections to October 28th and December 3rd, and no November meeting? No objections. So let it be known, VMRC commission meeting, the October meeting will be held Monday, the 28th of October for the October meeting. November and December will be combined on December 3rd. Gotcha. All right, now, that being said, there being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. The next commission meeting will be Tuesday, September the 24th, 2024. As they say,